Hey, welcome to the Dripping Stone Podcast, a podcast where two friends, and occasionally some other people, raise a glass and have a conversation. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kyle. This is one of those most special weeks on the podcast.
Ooh, what's that?
We're joined by some friends, some insiders in the world of distilling magic.
Yeah? Who's that?
It's Rob and Callum from the Holyrood Distillery in Edinburgh, Scotland.
Hey, guys. Great to have you on the Dripping Stone Podcast.
Yeah, thank you guys for visiting with us.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, glad to be here.
And how are you guys?
Yeah, good, to be honest. We're just off the back of a fairly recent release of our whiskey, so still riding the crest of the wave on that one at the moment, which is always a good feeling. Weather's not too bad, which is not something you get to say too often in Scotland as well. It's been quite a nice day. I've seen that big yellow ball in the sky that I think people call the sun whenever we get to see it now and again.
Yeah, we've had nothing but that. So, we're on the exact opposite. We haven't seen a rain cloud in months.
Legitimately.
Maybe we should do a transfer.
That's right.
The last summer, I visited Scotland for a couple of weeks and started in London, kind of took the train up and did a whole tour and just had phenomenal weather the whole time. And there was maybe 1 or 2 days in Edinburgh, it rained for like maybe half an hour, and every person there is like, this is fantastic, just because you guys have had such good weather. And then we get up to Skye, and it's a little dreary for about half a day, and all the tourists are all bundled up, and all the Scots are out in shorts and t-shirts, and just it's fantastic. And they're like, this is great weather, we love it.
Well, the old Scottish saying, you can't make whiskey without the water.
Very true.
That's so I have a little bit of a kind of a relationship with Holyrood as a whole, and I'd love to share that with you guys. But I think we should start with just a little bit of background. I know that our listeners, some are familiar with Holyrood, some have never heard of you guys, because I know that you're breaking into the American market here. So a little bit of background. What do you guys think?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Rob.
So my name's Rob Carpenter. I have a unique accent compared to everyone on the call because I'm Canadian. And Western Canadian specifically. And my background is, it's boring as anything. I was a lawyer for 27 years. But got into Holyrood because I love whiskey and had lived in Edinburgh 2004, 2005, come back to Canada with this idea of building a distillery. Ultimately, a lot of work went into a couple of ideas, and then the idea of building something in Edinburgh came along. And I just thought, okay, well, if I am going to do something, let's do it in Scotland, let's do it in Edinburgh. And now we have Holyrood.
Great idea.
Well, that's actually, I think, one of my first questions, and a question that when I visited, did you start distilling in 2019, or is that when your visitor center opened, the opening date?
Both. Visitor
Okay.
Center opened in August of 2019. We started distilling in September.
So my question is, in a country that has such a rich history of distilleries and spirits, you kind of opened in the heart of obviously the capital of Scotland, the heart of it all, like an amazing, bold decision. Why Edinburgh? Why there?
Well, because for a number of reasons. I mean, the Scotch is a beautiful passion, and it's a lovely artistic thing to do. It's also a business. We got to pay our employees. We got to make sure they've got a good future. And, so opening in Edinburgh ticked a couple of boxes for us. One, it gave us lots of great brand engagement. So people like yourself can come and visit, learn about us, learn about the brand, hopefully take, a great story home to your friends and family. And then the second piece is just, it's income from visitors.
Right.
So, that cash flow is important, particularly, still, frankly, but particularly in the early years, because Scotch whiskey is a challenging business model. It's the dumbest business model in the world. In terms of the amount of capital you got to put in, and then you're just waiting. So it's a crazy business model. But yeah, that's really, and the other part is just my wife and I. We love Edinburgh. We love being here. It's slowly becoming our first home. We used to say it's our second home, but I think it's slowly becoming the first. So that's not a hard decision to live and work in this great city.
I know on our end, like the more that we learn about Scotch, the more we get into Scotch, the more we realize that we know nothing about Scotch.
And we've been doing it for a little while.
Yeah. I mean, each door opens up a new cavern of things that we don't know. Has that been your kind of experience in starting your own distillery?
Well, it's not mine. It may have been my fault. My co-founder says, and I don't think he's entirely joking. Because we've had our ups and downs with COVID and everything else. But
yeah, what a time to start.
Yeah.
But so Holyrood is kind of my fault, but it's not me. It's not my distillery. It's a lot of people. It's different investors. And really, as far as I'm concerned, everybody who's been involved, some have moved on to other things, and we're happy to see them kind of move around the industry. But everyone is to be involved. It's their business now. I mean, they're making they're making the brand, they're making the liquid, they're really passionate about working for Holyrood, and it's their business as much as anyone else's now.
And Callum.
Yeah, I'm the distillery manager at Holyrood. I didn't really do my intro there, but I joined Holyrood in 2021, so right in the mire, sort of just poking our head out of the whole kind of COVID thing while still being in it. I joined as one of the senior distillers, and have quickly gone from that to the assistant distillery manager there, and then took over as distillery manager about a year and a half now, I think it is. Time flies when you're having lots of fun and making crazy good whiskey. But it's I think the Edinburgh factors. There's something that's really quite special about it, and as somebody who I was born in Edinburgh but didn't live in Edinburgh for quite a long time. I grew up in another part of Scotland, but what's been really interesting, sort of seeing Holyrood from afar and then seeing it from the inside, is that Edinburgh's the landing point for so many people when they come to Scotland. The first place they're going to be in Scotland is Edinburgh, and it's kind of crazy that for so many years you land in Edinburgh and you're like, I want to see a whiskey distillery, and you're like, well, you better hop on a bus or a train because there's not one anywhere near here, And I think it's really great that we can kind of be that gateway to people when they come, and whether you mentioned about going up to the Skye, whether you're going to the Highlands, Campbelltown, all those kind of places that are kind of known for their whiskey heritage and stuff, but they all start in Edinburgh, and I think that's what's really nice for us, is that quite often we might be the first distillery that anyone's ever been to, and it's a bit of a challenge sometimes because you've got to cram quite a lot of information. You guys just said the amount of things you learn on a daily basis. I mean, I know frankly nothing, and I've been in this for quite a few years now, but you meet some people who've been in the industry for like 40 years and they know everything. So it's this great learning thing, and what I really enjoy about where we are is we get to be that kind of first hook in for people and get them excited, so that when they then carry on the rest of their trip, or like Rob and Kelly end up staying in Scotland, they've got so much to go from, but we can be like the launch pad to whiskey for a lot of people. And that's, I think, what's really unique and quite cool about where we are.
Yeah. And I do think connected to that is I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much, but it's a bit of a responsibility, because we may be the only distillery a lot of people who come to Scotland ever see. And otherwise they wouldn't have seen one because they only spend 3 days in Edinburgh or something. And,
right.
So I think there is a little bit, I certainly feel a little bit of a responsibility to make sure we do a good job representing the whole industry. It's not just about Holyrood. We're part of a tradition and an industry in Scotland, and it's a lovely thing to be part of.
Yeah, it's very unique, but like super exciting kind of place to find yourself, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that my experience, visiting Edinburgh, because again, most people, are there for a couple of days. it's a city with rich history, and there's a lot to do. But people also want to get out and do other things, or they're traveling and sightseeing. And we met a couple there, and they were like, we've done a couple of whiskey shops around here. We've gone to a couple of experiences from some other companies, but do you guys know? Is my wife and I. Do you guys know of a distillery that we can visit? And I was like, actually, I do know of a distillery you can visit because the day prior, we climbed Arthur's Seat, which was more arduous than I thought it was going to be.
I was going to say, well done. It tricks you. You think it's not going to be too bad. You're like, it's a pretty shallow incline, and then you get about halfway up and go, poof. Didn't expect that.
That was not the word I used. It was a little more crass than that. Yeah, it was very, very close. And of course, everyone, likewise, I'm looking around, and there are locals doing it too, just as a day hike kind of thing. And we're all like huffing and puffing, and like, okay, this view better be worth it. I'm telling you. And it was. But then we left Arthur's Seat, and I'm like, oh well, the distillery's just right over there. Little did I know the path that we took. It was about another hour walk to the distillery from where we were. I'm like, man. So we're tired, we're sweaty, we're hungry, and I want to drink at this point. So by the time we got to the distillery, everyone there just made us feel so welcome, and having, being a part of the industry just from, the kind of the outside, and visiting a bunch of distilleries, just to walk into a place that it felt like home, even though I'd never been there. And everyone, getting a tasting, just kind of sitting and hanging out and being like, this post hike and then hour-long walk afterwards. Everyone made me feel like, here's some great things to sample. Let us know if you have any questions. I went and asked, I don't know who was working that day, but I went and asked a couple questions, and everyone just kind of knew, here's some information. Here's things that you need to know. And it was such a great experience that, again, everyone that I talked to just in the couple of days that we were in Edinburgh, I made sure to mention, go down there. First of all, you're going to get some great product. And what do you have to lose? It's, it's a 5-minute, 10-minute walk from where we are. It's going to be great.
Oh, well, appreciate you sending them our way. We'll need to, keep you on retainer or something next time you're in Edinburgh.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, you haven't gotten my bill yet, but it isn't.
We'll wait for that coming in on the email. But, that's really lovely to hear. And I think that, for us, it's not just, myself and the production team that are passionate about what we do. It's like every person at Holyrood. And I'm glad you felt that, because like they genuinely, some of the tour guides we have, they know more about whiskey than I'll ever know, because they're just complete whiskey geeks. And it's really great that, I like to think we'd balance it quite well of, if you're totally new and you're like, what is whiskey? Well, we've got you covered. But if you're coming in there being like, what is the gravity of, your fermentation? We've got you covered on that as well. And I think we can, we're a home for the casual new fans, but also the super geeks. We'll sit and talk shop with you all the time as well. And that's really important for me and everyone at Holyrood, I think, as well, that the fact you said feels like home, that's a marketing slogan right there, if ever I saw one.
Yeah. No, that's always been part of our ethos is, just be hospitable. Scotland and Scottish people are incredibly hospitable already, so you're starting with a really high bar there. And, then you just take that and you ask people to be friendly and welcoming, and it's just a given here, really. And you hire the right people who are already geeks and want to learn more and more and more. We've got, Slack channels with, crazy whiskey questions that people just throw up a question and other people throw answers to, and everyone learns together. Yeah. So, I'm glad you had a great experience, and I would expect no less. I'm really, really proud of our visitor team. They do a great job.
What you said both too, it's that for me, and I think for us, I'm always impressed going into a place. First of all, is what you're providing drink wise, regardless of what it is, if it's a brewery or a distillery, is it good product first? But then can you engage, as you guys just mentioned, on those multiple levels? Can you have a discussion with your whiskey initiate, someone who is, Rob, as you mentioned, just coming into Edinburgh, they know nothing about whiskey, and they happen to, let's go there. And then can you engage with people who, On a good day, I think we know a little bit.
A little bit, a fair amount.
We could ask and engage in those questions, and that's what made it special.
And it's never more disappointing than expecting to be able to do that and not get it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because we've unfortunately been in those situations.
had that experience.
As I'm sure you have, you kind of walk into a situation and like, hey, let's have a nerdy conversation. The person just can't compete or can't offer anything for you.
Yeah. Or they shut you down and they're like, I've not got time for this.
Absolutely.
It's not in my script, so I don't.
Right. Yeah, that's more so in like an hour neck of the woods of like Central Florida. If we go to whiskey festivals and things like that, and you're ready to like engage, and then it's just what I don't know what's malted barley. I have no idea. Okay, never mind.
So one more thing about Edinburgh, in what role outside of being that possibly whiskey initiate or just the tourists coming into Edinburgh, what role do you think Edinburgh plays in making Holyrood special as a distillery, but also in terms of the products that you're making?
Well, I'm gonna, make you answer this, Callum, but I'm thinking, and Edinburgh's brewing heritage is really a big part of it. So, and you'll wax more poetically on that than I will.
I think, yeah, that's a big part of our DNA is that, historically Edinburgh was not that well known for whiskey. It's, so many other parts of Scotland have got this huge whiskey heritage. And, for a long time we had North British, which is still there, big grain distillery in the middle of the city. It's very much a staple of Edinburgh. A lot of people that have lived there previously, not so much now because of issues with the council, but there's the smell of the maltons there used to, blow across the whole city. I still get it at my front door when I open the door sometimes.
Lovely.
It's a surprise I'm not obese, to be honest, because I've got either the biscuit factory from one direction in the wind and North British from the other, and either way I'm stepping out either thirsty or hungry. So, but it's I think that's a huge kind of part of Edinburgh's identity, and we had the Caledonian Brewery there as well, which was a massive part of the city, and for so long beer has been what has really driven Edinburgh. That's been like the kind of the blood that runs through it, the city, and for us that was a really great kind of inspiration to draw upon. Particularly the early team at Holyrood, myself coming in as well, had a bit of a background in brewing as well as distilling. We'd made beer previously, so we were able to kind of literally go out into the city and look at things like 80 Shilling, which is the kind of famous beer to come out of Edinburgh. We could look at that and go, could we turn that into a whiskey? And being able to ask that question, and then Rob kindly allowing us to kind of go in and be like, if anything, you're the one pushing us and being like, yeah, go and find out. I think that's what's really unique and cool, is that Edinburgh's got this kind of history that's maybe not whiskey focused, but there's so many little pieces around the city that kind of tie in. Even the building that our distillery is in is an old engine shed that previously would bring goods in from Dalkeith, which is just outside the city, bring that in, and quite often that would be supplying the malt to all the breweries that were there. There's a glassworks that wasn't too far from where the distillery is. The area that we're in was known as the Charmed Circle because there's an aquifer that runs underneath the part of the city that we're in, which had amazing water for brewing. You're not chucking any chemicals in there to sort it. It's ready to go straight out the tap for really good beer. So there's something about that we're able to kind of draw upon and push into a whiskey space and see what happens. And that's what I think is really great about Edinburgh. But also, like, your distillery is your people. The people that work there is your distillery. And it's got a history as a city of enlightenment, if you want to go down that. There's a lot of very wise people in Edinburgh coming up with really kind of groundbreaking stuff. But the Edinburgh that we have now is very much, it's quite a modern city, particularly in Scotland. I think there's so much different influences from around the world coming into Edinburgh as well, and I think that's also made its way into Holyrood's DNA as well, because although we are a Scotch whiskey distillery, we're definitely inspired by what's happening in other parts of the world, and the approaches that places like Japan or Canada or even America, obviously, and parts of Europe as well, seeing what everyone else has kind of done with something that we still consider our own, but we, much like Rob was saying about when we see members of our team go off to other parts of the industry. I love, I'm a big music fan, and I love that there's always been a kind of transatlantic exchange that happens, music that was like, kind of Elvis back and forth, and then the blues, and then rock and roll and metal, and the way that all kind of went. And I think what's really cool is whiskey's really kind of going through that currently at the moment. And, I think that's also led to us to be quite an open distillery. We show off, if you want to know about what we do in terms of production, we'll tell you. We'll probably print it on the bottle because we're, I find it funny in Scotland for so long. So much was, it was a very top secret. Everything's in a dusty old book and it's locked away and no one knows. It's a bit of your kind of 7 herbs and spices kind of vibe going on. But we're kind of take the opposite approach and really be like, look, here's what we do. We want people to copy us. It's the best form of flattery, and all it means is other people might come up with cool stuff. But and I think, yeah, that mindset of being Scottish, but really looking outward for inspiration as well as inward is really the role that Edinburgh has played for us, and I think is key to who we are.
That's brilliant. I've never thought about like the music take of like the push and pull back and forth. That's a great idea.
I love that, and I hope that what Callum said is becoming more true for American distilleries as we kind of get into more experimentation and not. And I know, I'm sure you guys know this, like this kind of like the precious nature of what bourbon is, and it's so in some ways like narrow road that we're starting to see here in the States more experimentation. That I think that's the future.
Yeah, I mean it's that we can empathize with that massively. I always describe Scotch whiskey as this box that we're in, and we have to stay within that to keep it a Scotch whiskey because it's very defined for us what a Scotch whiskey is. But the way I see it as our job at Holyrood is to get as close to the edge of that box, and somebody could slap our fingers away and we'll move back again. But we're always going to be trying to push that box a little bit higher up.
Stretch it out.
That's it. You got to take it to the limit, and then if they tell you no, okay, sorry. But I think that's really a big philosophy of ours is to really drive that experimentation, but within a very defined field. And if anything, that's a more interesting challenge because it's like, here, I want you to paint this picture, but you've only got three colored pencils. That's your kind of thing there. Where you go, and that's
make something
terrible analogy if you're
this.
painting with pencils. I just realized, but I'm sure you'll forgive me that one.
It all works.
Something that I really appreciate, Callum, that you mentioned too, is the transparency, and I think that you guys being a distillery and being kind of just entrenched in that, I'm sure you see it all the time of people, nope, we're not going to tell you this. We're not going to divulge any secrets. But in kind of the modern information age, we all know the basics of how this process works. We know how, a brewer's beer is made. We know how distilling works. We know all of these things. So then to me, just the whiskey nerd and the nerd in general, I love when I get a fact sheet. I love when I'm given more information just because now I can be more informed about the product that I'm enjoying anyway. And then I know that there's nothing to hide. There's, here's who we are, here's what we are. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, we love sharing it. I mean, even the bottles, we put a QR code on the back there. You scan the QR code, it'll tell you everything that's in there, percentages of malts, different types of yeasts, the casks that we've used. Because, like I say, we're also geeks and we like to nerd out on that stuff. And, if I could go to some of the bottles I've got on the shelf and be able to do the same thing, that would be unreal, for established brands that I've loved for years. But there's also, I think it's interesting that the more you show, the more that you can celebrate the kind of unseen magic, that weird alchemy that happens for whiskey that, you can chart everything out in spreadsheets and you can analyze everything, within an inch of its life, but there's always going to be that kind of little spark of magic that just comes from all those things kind of colliding and aligning with each other.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, and I mean, the transparency is really I mean, we insisted on that, both David Robertson and I. You know, David is co-founder, along with myself and my wife, and I mean, we always insisted on that from the very beginning, that we were going to be very transparent. We're not making cutting edge pharmaceuticals here. So, as you say, the processes are well understood, but it's the magic that is proprietary, and the magic of the people and the equipment that you've got in the distillery. You can't give that away and you can't explain it. But the rest of it, why not? That's part of the ethos of Enbra and the Enlightenment in many ways. It's always been the way I've done business, as a lawyer. I was always, very straight up with people, because I thought that was always the best way to be. Don't hide stuff. You're going to get to a much better solution for everybody if you're open and honest about it.
Couldn't say better.
You mentioned some magic, and I just realized, Kyle, we have 2 samples here that we've not cracked open.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear about it.
So from our friends at Scotch Drinkers Only, who you guys have partnered with, we have a couple of samples here, and I think we'd like if you guys talk maybe about each of these. We have the Embra and the Amber. Which one should we start with?
Tough question. Tough question.
That's what we're here for.
It's I guess, are you a chronological kind of person, or do you like to shake it up? I'm a sucker for chronological.
I was gonna say I'm a nerd for chronology.
I love time.
Yeah, bring it on.
Okay, so Embra then would be the one I would recommend starting with. Now, I've got a good I think it's a good backstory to this and kind of the thinking and ideas behind this. So this kind of actually harks back to, for me, how I got into whiskey. So my whiskey origin story is I'm on a tour bus in Europe with a death metal band from Sweden, and the guitarist was absolutely shocked and outraged that I didn't know what Lafroiega, which I now know is Lafroig. He was raging that I'd never heard of this, being a Scottish guy. So got a large dram of that poured down my gullet, and my reaction was, oh my God, that's so smoky. I don't know what to do with that. My senses have gone all to hell.
Sure.
So I had that sort of seed planted in my mind. And then my current partner, when I first met her, hated whiskey, didn't even want to be near me. I ordered a Bowmore at a bar in town, and she moved 2 seats away from me. That was like the level of, no thanks, I don't do this. So I kind of had this all mulling around my head and thought, it's something we're all guilty of, being, peated whiskey fans, is once you get into it, it kind of turns into a bit of an arms race sometimes. Yep. And you're like, give me more, give me more smoke. I want it more and more and more. And when you're kind of deep in it, you don't really pick up on how that could be really jarring or kind of like off-putting for some people. So I kind of thought, right, well, as I kind of mentioned before, we're the gateway to whiskey for a lot of people. So how do we make like the gateway to peat? How do we open the door to people and show them this great thing that we all love, which is these, delicious smoky whiskies? So the idea with Embra was, we wanted to be distinctly Holyrood, so we're not just playing it simple here. There's quite a lot happening and kind of going on there. But the idea was we wanted like a really approachable peated whiskey. So I would say if you know somebody who goes, nah, I don't do peated whiskies, we want you to hand them a glass of this, and this should be the kind of hook and in point. And the kind of main way we did it was, there's a split on the malt bill here, so it's almost 50-50 of peated and unpeated malt. But part of what we do in our work with like what we call specialty malts, but maybe known as like coloured malts or roasted malts, more commonly used in brewing, we do a lot of work with those. Basically, if you're allowed to use it in Scotland, we probably already have. It's kind of the line I tend to go with. But we use chocolate malt, so obviously used in stouts, porters, that kind of deep color and stuff. Obviously, we don't get a color when we distill it, but the flavor is in there. And what's great about chocolate malt is it kind of acts as a bridge between your flavors and textures of peated malt and the same flavors and textures you get from your kind of classic distilling malt. And I think it works as a bit of a flavor bridge. On the yeast front, we've got quite a lot going on in here, if I'm totally honest. There's you got tropical wine yeast, you've got a couple of brewing strains in there, like Nottingham Ale, kind of really classic old school British brewing yeasts we've got in there, and then two distilling strains as well, which were really kind of the benchmark and the staple of our kind of early production.
Does that just come from a bunch of tinkering, or was it like, this is, we know this is a kind of a tried and true things, let's add this little bit and see what happens, until it became the profile that you wanted?
I think it's really interesting that I get to look sort of as a fan that came in. I get to look at like the early notes and the early production, and what was really great and remains true to this day is we've got a mantra now that we managed to sort of put down in a slogan, but has clearly been there from the very start of Holyrood, and it's test, learn, improve, repeat. That drives everything we do. So try it, learn from it, let's do it again and make it better. And what's really interesting is David had this, amazing wealth of knowledge from his time, all over the industry. But he's known for being, one of the youngest master blenders that Macallan ever had, and that wealth of knowledge, it's there on paper. When we see the early kind of stuff that's there, but also you could see he's got that maverick spirit of being like, let's try a little bit of that. What about a little bit more? What about if we throw this in there? What about, and then it gets kind of crazy at times, but you can find so much really interesting things. So it's all been a journey of kind of learning how these flavors work, so that when I come to make a final whiskey, we vat cast together for single malt. But what's really interesting is I get to like pretend I'm a blender a little bit, because we have all these different recipes and all these different malts and yeast that we've used in a bunch of different new make spirits, that I kind of get to go, oh well, I'll take a little bit of that from there and some of that from there, and we kind of we get to pretend we're a blender, but it's all made under our roof, and it's a really kind of fascinating thing for me to work with, and hopefully for the drinkers to enjoy as well, and kind of see that approach coming through.
So in that respect, is each bottling then just slightly different? It's the same general profile, but just there's a little bit difference here and there.
Well, I think this is your tagline, Rob. So I'm going to leave this to you to kind of talk this one through.
I think it's probably time to go through both Embra and Ambier, and if you guys can find a common sort of flavor theme in there, that's fine and that's great. But our ethos, and it's frankly it's one of the questions you kind of posed from the beginning, is innovation and creating great new make, complex, interesting new make right off the still, and that's using specialty malts and heritage malts and different yeasts and creating delicious new make. And then this industry, almost religion, that 70% of the flavor comes from the cask. Well, does it? Not maybe, not with Holyrood. We're creating lots and lots of interesting flavor and complexity before anything goes into cask. And so right now, no, we're starting to sort of pick up on some distillery character, that does come through in almost everything we do, but we're not trying to release the same flavor profile. We're not trying to go for a flavor profile. We're not trying to aim for age statements. We're just trying to release really interesting great whiskeys.
It's kind of a craft beer approach is how I describe it. You make a batch and you go, that's pretty class. Let's put it out and see what people think. And people either go crazy for it and you go, cool, can we do that again but better? Can we play around with that? Or if somebody goes, oh, that's horrible, I never want to drink that again, and it tanks, then you can be like, well, we tried, but let's move on to the next thing, But I think, that's how I've always looked at it, is we do kind of collections or series. We put it out there. If you like it, I would say buy a couple, because when it's gone, it's gone. You'll never get that whiskey again. And, it's a really kind of cool thing for us as whiskey makers, for me and the production team, is to kind of look at things in a very... It's quite a simple way to look at it. It's just is this really good? We don't have to worry about, is it the right age? Do we have to give it a few more months to get to that 8 year that we need to get to? we don't have those concerns. It's the driving principle of everything that has been really laid down since Holyrood was founded was flavor first. It needs to taste really good. Everything else is kind of arbitrary, and that's really freeing, and it allows myself and the production team to really lean into that and just worry about coming up with really cool whiskies and not really having to worry about some of the noise that kind of normally sits around that.
So what do you think?
The nose is incredible. Like there's so much depth into it, and hearing everything that's going into it, it is such a gorgeous nose.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about it, I love a peated whiskey now, but I'm thinking about it from the me when I started, Callum, very much a similar situation. I think it was actually Kyle. Like, I did not like anything peated, and I was like, nah, not for me. And now, like, I would even say there's probably more things on my shelf that are peated than unpeated at this point. The malt is forward. The smoky peat is just kind of holding up the sweet malty nature, and I found that just amazing.
I'm an absolute geek for bottle art, and listening to the story, and I don't know if you looked at this. It's like a hand with the smoke coming from it as if it's like a gift. I love that. After hearing the story and now looking at that, that is such a beautiful little bit of narrative right there on the bottle.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, and what I kind of have quite enjoyed is, I've taken this to whiskey shows and fairs and stuff, and I kind of give that, the sort of idea that it's leaning towards bringing somebody into peat, but you get folk that are, I had guys from well-established, very smoky distilleries coming over and going, that's absolutely beautiful. That's great. So I think what's really interesting for what we've been working on is that peat can be great for not just the flavor, but the textural element. It gives you that lovely,
Absolutely.
The word I would use is a very Scottish one, but claggy. It kind of sticks to your mouth and it hangs, or it got a bit of velvet kind of coming through. And that's what's really quite cool when you pair that up with other ingredients and other flavors. The nose on that one for me, that's the yeast doing the talking a lot on that. That really kind of fruity element that comes through, paired up with the fact we have, very tall stills that lean towards a very fruity character. And we were really chuffed, really happy when that came in, and we were like, this is great. We're kind of hitting the right mark here. But for us as well, it's on the weaker side of things. It's 40. Last time I checked, I think it's 43.6 if I'm right on that. It's been a while.
Nailed it.
Still got it. That's fine.
Right.
And that's one of those things that we don't do chill filtering, we don't add color, we don't do any of that, and it can kind of raise eyes with people when they look at you and again go, it's not really the done thing, but we do so much work with the interested yeast to build those flavors in that, in my mind, it would be crazy if we ripped all of that out on a chill filtering at the back end. So you've got really kind of to use a better term, proper whiskey there, where it's just here's as it comes,
Yeah.
And I think, again, borrowing from craft beer, people have got a lot more used to, the idea a hazy beer, 15 years ago, the idea of, loads of people sitting in a bar drinking hazy beers, they'd be like, your taps are wrecked, you need to change the lines. People are more interested in those kind of things and can look past a visual to understand a flavor element, and that's really something we tried to do with Embra as well.
What I really appreciate too is that you have this really beautiful nose, you get the bright fruity notes accentuated by the peat, and then on the mouthfeel, it's just it matches it perfectly. It's really, you mentioned for us to be clingy, I guess is a terrible expression, but it's clingy. It's not something that's thin. It's not super heavy though. It's got a great mouthfeel. It's a little chewy, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, we've said it for a long time in terms of, a bourbon at 43.6 is going to be so watery, and it's not going to have the depth, and it doesn't have the flavor impact that you want it to have. And I love it so much that Scotch does that and does it so well. It's just so impressive.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. I mean, I know we're on air, so if you hate it, you can just send us an email afterwards or whatever. But
no chance.
I think it's great, and it's like you say as well. It can be one of those things that it's a really fine line to walk. And another thing that I kind of want to mention with Embra is that's the first one that we we've always done our whiskies in a very much unconventional manner. You probably picked up, I'm not your usual distillery manager, and especially not for Scotland. And we're not your usual distillery, and that's really something that goes into everything, including the whiskies. A big part of how we'll come up with a whiskey like Embra is I'll come up with the kind of initial idea, the outline. We'll put a few kind of ideas together. People will come, usually in the distilling team, we'll go through them, kind of narrow it down, and then we open it up to everyone. We'll put out a couple of examples of ABVs. The team, no matter what department you work in, can come up to the lab, try it out, vote on it, and we build our whiskey together. Because
that's crazy.
Chances
that's awesome.
of the four of us having the same favourite whiskey are pretty slim. But if me and 28 other people go, this is really good, by the way, there's more chance that other people outside of our distillery are going to agree. And that's something that I'm really proud of that we do, and we're going to continue to do. And really has carried on. I'm going to do the little step over here, but the next dram that you have there is even more indicative of that approach. There's a really big group effort that went into that, and everyone has been involved really from start to finish on that one. And I think it's a really real point of pride, is that I'm not just the man up the top telling everyone my palate is great. It's this is the whiskey that we are really proud of, as opposed to just myself. I will say it's a completely different beast to the one that you've just had. So I would say it does sum us up very well. Again, we're not trying to do the same thing more than once here. It's very much we're going to come up with something cool and put it out in the world here.
We're going to waste no time. We're jumping right into it.
Right, cool. Okay, I'll carry on then. So this one, the best way for me to sum this up is this is my Scottish taste buds distilled down to their essence. We like it sweet in Scotland. We grow up drinking Iron Brew and eating tablet, and we like things a little bit on the sweeter side of life.
A little
Scotch
bit,
ales.
a little sweet.
I've had tablet.
It's just sugar, basically, but we absolutely love
Nick
it.
made tablet. Nick made tablet a few weeks ago.
And I feel like I'm not going to brag too much, but I feel like a Scottish grandmother would be happy with
Pat you on your shoulder.
Oh,
and say,
well, yeah.
Well done.
Well done.
To be fair, that's the ultimate benchmark for tablet. If somebody's grand tells you it's good, you could sell it anywhere, to be honest.
Oh my gosh, have you noticed that?
No, I haven't.
So yeah, this is on the more sweeter sides, but this is really a kind of culmination of all the stuff that we talked about in the sort of early years. It's a funny thing when you start a distillery, as you're like, I promise you guys there's something good coming, but see us in 3 years, until it's actually kind of out there. And
yeah,
it's an absolute malt bomb is how I would describe this. We've got
Definitely
classic distilling malt in there, but you've got things like Vienna malt, classic German brewing malt, gives you loads of good kind of like pastry flavors and stuff. We've got crystal malt and cara malt, which just give layers and layers of like syrup and toffee and caramel. They're huge in, again, Scottish red ales, which are traditionally strong ABV, very sweet. And I feel like this is a kind of good tip of the hat to that as well. We do have a lot of yeast going on in this one, to the point where it kind of gets a bit insane. But also I think is really what pushes a lot of the malt flavors kind of together and helps them not feel too far apart. I just get like red berries, cornflakes.
Yeah.
You're smashing a good load of digestive biscuits in there as well.
When you said cornflakes, and I was like, yeah, but I'm getting some biscuits. I'm getting those like just quintessential Scottish digestive biscuits for sure. And the nose is so complex. Like there's so many layers here.
I like to describe it as like a malt elevator. You kind of get in at the top where it's, you're sitting there and it's all like, classic distilling malt. And as you drop through, you're going through the sort of, slightly more kilned caramel kind of flavors and stuff.
Totally.
And then right at the bottom, you just hit that little kind of pinch of chocolate and stuff in there. It just rounds out nicely. So yeah, I call it the malt elevator, basically.
Yeah, I love that, like the end of that, little chocolate cocoa, just a bit of bitter on the nose. Like that is fantastic.
And what's really interesting with the ambier that you have there as well is that I think it's one of those things to hark back to the kind of brewing kind of thing, or sorry, the blending side of things, is that we put that together, and it was so close but not quite there, and we're like, what is this missing? And we literally added in a single peated cask into that, and it just all of a sudden just tied everything together instantly. And that was like a revelation. It was just a single cask dropped in there, boom, all of a sudden it's like all the pieces just fell together.
That's incredible.
That's one of the things we can do, is because we've done so much innovation. We have lots of tunes we can play. And, both of these are 3.5, 4 years old, somewhere like that. And, some people would go, oh, well, that's way too young. But when you're creating flavor before things go into cask, and then you've got all kinds of different things you can play with when you're putting your whiskeys together, you can release really interesting stuff at a young age, and it's lovely. It's drinkable. Mouthfeel is great, and we're really proud of these.
Rob, I think you make such a good point in terms of, so many people are focused on age as like the sole indicator of, the prowess of a product, of a company, what that thing is, that I think too often, in our experience anyway, people overlook things that are on the younger side of whiskey as a whole. Whereas you get something like this, that you're exactly right. There's so much flavor that's going on within, you said 3.5 to 4.5-ish years, that, that's incredible. And I think that, especially, here in the States, we get a lot of, bourbon tends to be in that 4-ish year range. Obviously, we have older bourbons now, just because people are so infatuated with age. But just from a business perspective, going back to what you said very early, unless you just the capital and cash flow you've got, that you can, bankroll 16 years of something, why not create a product that is just killer at 3.5 years, and then eventually we might get to a 16 year. But this is fantastic where it is. Let's keep doing that.
Yeah, no, you've hit the nail on the head. That's we will do older things in due course, but in the meantime, we can release some really delicious younger whiskeys and start building the brand and start getting the name out there. And it's lots of fun. There's a new one that, as Callum mentioned earlier on, there's a new one out called Pitch. So
that's got some color.
Watch for that coming over to the States.
I'll be honest, lads. That's my personal favourite so far as well. It's I feel like the team knocked out the park on that one.
Well,
nice.
I'm looking at the bottles we have, and
it fits nicely right alongside those ones as well. To be honest, that's what's great is it's sits perfectly in a little tasting with the two that you've got there, I will say. So maybe save some, and you can, once it lands over there for you guys, you can get wired into all
on the
three.
to-do list.
Well, we can get
absolutely. Yeah. Don't
listen,
worry about
I was really hoping you'd say that. Like, I'm over here fishing. I'm like, come on,
take that line.
Or in addition to those, like, we just go to Edinburgh.
We just have to go do it.
We just have to do it. Like, I've done
now.
It. It's not that hard. Yeah. It's an easy flight.
We'll go do it.
Yeah, we'll go do it. A question that I have in regards to the aging, I know that so many distilleries, it seems like, are aging all their stuff in East Kilbride. They're putting all their stuff, stuff like Glasgow. Are you guys aging everything in Edinburgh? Are you taking it somewhere else, or on property? What are you guys doing in terms of the aging?
Well, you've seen the distillery. We're right in the middle of folks' houses. We're about as in the city as you can get. I can literally, stand in the yard and chat to a guy while he's, hanging out his kitchen window if I wanted to. So,
in fact, I did that, and the lady yelled at me too.
She was impressed by your
beard.
She was.
We've got warehousing that's sort of just towards Edinburgh Airport. Basically, is where we keep our casks at the moment. So we're close enough to them that I can get stuck into them and go and see. Would I love to walk down the stairs in the distillery and walk in a massive warehouse? Sure, but you're going to struggle to get that approved with the council, I think. Like, do you
I'm
wanna
sure.
fill this place with loads of barrels of alcohol? They're a bit like, I'm not too sure. But yeah, and it's, again, that's one of the challenges that comes from being in the city, and it's the trade-off that we have is, logistically. I mean, you've seen the cobbled street right outside our place.
Mm-hmm.
Trucks aren't a big fan of that, if I'm totally honest. So we have to be very clear with delivery drivers on the size of vehicle that we can handle and things like that. So there's a trade-off in that regard, but I wouldn't trade it for anything really. Being able to, just be in the middle of the city and have that community connection as well. One of the best things is we'll be doing the draft out and, taking the spent grain out of the mash tun, and some guy will just walk past with a dog and be like, "What are you doing there?" And you'll be like, "Oh, making whiskey." He's like, "Aye, okay." And then he goes away around and into the shop, and then away he leaves with a bottle, and you're like, "This is great,"
Fair enough.
We've had all kinds of cool requests from people, projects involving the draft and all these kind of things, and it all comes literally from somebody just walking past and taking an interest and having a chat. And that's something you don't get when you're, in the bottom of some glen up in the Highlands and that, whereas the only person you're chatting to is a sheep, let's be honest. So that's the benefit that we get. I
don't know, how much whiskey does the sheep drink? I mean,
No, it's how much whiskey have you had to then talk to
to
the
be
sheep.
able to talk sheep.
Exactly.
They're quite big. I think they could put a good dram or two away, to be honest. So.
Yeah.
So, as you guys are expanding and obviously, distributing here in the U.S., how do you make sure that you're still rooted in the local community? I mean, obviously being there is one thing, but how do you guys make sure that, like, nope, we are Edinburgh?
I mean, a big thing, I've got my t-shirt on, our branding, we are made by Edinburgh is our branding,
Right.
again, we like to celebrate the city and we'll mention Edinburgh as much as we can. But I mean, we do things like, one of my favourites is we do a thing called an EH evening. So anyone that has an Edinburgh postcode can come and do like a free tour on a Thursday night. We run that,
Oh.
periodically throughout the year, sort of whenever we're not in the crazy fringe season that we have in Edinburgh. We can run nights like that, and it's really good for just getting a bit of people coming in. We have live music in the bar, and there's about that kind of vibe going through. But we also build like close links with, breweries in the city. We'll team ups with them and collaborations and things. And for me, it's just celebrating it any way we can. And we get all kinds of interesting proposals and projects coming our way because we're in Edinburgh. The biggest one for us is we've got Heriot Watt University in Edinburgh, world renowned for its brewing and distilling courses. And we're really proud of the fact that we've done lots of work with them, be it, helping them with analysis, or we get students in to come and do tours pretty much every year at this point. It's becoming a staple thing for me. And being able to kind of give back to that side of things is really important because you're tying yourself in with your city, but you're also able to connect with, the next generation of either consumers or, even better, the next generation of brewers and distillers coming through. And we ran PhDs co-funded with our malt supplier through Heriot Watt to kind of get information that's directly impacted our production. So yeah, those are kind of the ones that spring to mind for me of how we stay connected, and we'll celebrate everything as much as we can. Arthur's Seat, you mentioned there, our gin is named after the Gaelic name for Arthur's Seat and things like that. So we'll always put in those little Easter eggs and try and have as many links as possible. We're a sucker for a good story.
Yeah, the name Embra is an ode to the city, in many ways. It's the colloquial saying, way Scots pronounce Edinburgh, Embra, and so that's part of it as well.
Yeah, you look at old maps and they say Embra, or Glasgow's Glasgow, and there's all that kind of really colloquial stuff that I think is really cool as well. Yeah.
You mentioned the gin, and man, I'm a big fan of gin too, and had the sample that I had gin on it as well, or the flight I did a gin, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is great too. And if a gin is good, and then now you're aging, here's your distillate, or here's versions of distillate, and then aging something else, the whiskey's gonna be great too.
Well, that and I'm so much more of a fan of distilleries like yourself that will even if it is on the younger side, no, I want you to taste what we're making instead of the places that will source and say, like, this is what we're trying to accomplish.
Sure.
I have so much more respect for that because I know this is what you're trying. This is actually what you're making, but also you're taking me on the journey with you as you're finding your way through it, and that's such a more rewarding experience as a consumer too.
Yeah, it's cool as a fan, you know. I mean, even we were putting out bottles of, you know, New Make Spirit, or I think White Dog is probably the term. You guys maybe know it more, but yeah,
Sure.
like we were putting that out there, which is really not, or at least at the time was not a done thing in Scotch whisky at all. You know, it's
right.
You guys will know if you've been on any distillery tours in Scotland. It's like, don't even look at the spirit before it's in the barrel. Like we just want to get it in there as fast as possible. So
here's the safe, but we don't talk about it.
Yeah, like the fact we could put out, you know, our distillate in a bottle and be like, here's the starting point. You know, where this is only just the beginning, and I think that bought us a lot of goodwill from people as well, because, as you say, they could see what we were trying to do straight away, but it wasn't, as you say, a kind of abstract connection to some other liquid or anything. And yes, you know,
we still sell what 7, 8 new makes in the brand home. You know, and there's still demand for it because people are really interested in where it all starts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, new make listed in bars and cocktails is not anything I ever thought I would see, but at times I go out and I look and I'm like, new make, that's crazy. And I'm like, oh, it's our new make, right? That makes sense. Okay.
Makes sense now.
Was that a pun? That was a pun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't know.
Just claim it. Just claim the pun.
Yeah, absolutely was. Okay, so we'll kind of wrap it up here. We'll respect your time, guys.
No worries.
Although to be fair, I think we could talk for hours.
We could do this for 3 more hours, easy.
I mean,
we'll save that episode for when you guys come and see us in Edinburgh.
Okay,
there it is.
Yeah, we can do an on-site one.
Oh,
yeah.
Even better.
Yeah, love that. Looking ahead, what excites both of you the most about the future of where you're taking Holyrood?
I'm really excited about, you know, the innovation we're doing. I'm very excited about, you know, our approach to releasing whiskey, which is pretty unique. It's you know, we're not saying, oh, you know, here's the flavor lane we're always going to be in. You know, we're setting our flag. We may get to, you know, a more core flavor profile in due course, but in the meantime, you know, I'd like to, you know, really get known for making delicious product. And, you know, I think the fact that, you know, we picked up the award, you know, the 2025 Global Distiller of the Year, you know, a few weeks ago, you know, that's, you know, compared to the Academy Awards, I mean, that's not just Best Producer, Best Director, Best Actor. That is Best Picture. You know, that's all the elements coming together. That's brand home, that's production, that's everything. You know, that's being recognized for. I'm very, very proud of that. And I'm very proud of the fact that, you know, we're releasing really, you know, delicious, interesting whiskeys. And so I think that's the immediate future.
And, you know, I'm a little bit closer to the work in progress liquid at the moment. And, you know, we've got some absolute just bangers on the way, to be honest. It's one of those ones where you go, God, I love my job sometimes when you get the next batch of samples coming in. And, you know, I think what's great is that, you know, I mean, me personally, I'm very excited that it's a lot of stuff that I mashed myself is now coming of age, which is, you know, quite a novel and unique feeling. But I think we did so much iterations and so many recipes, you know, 2 or 3 years ago that we're now really starting to get the fruits of that coming through. So I'm just really excited to see how some of, you know, how my babies have kind of grown a little bit in the cast, but also how they can come together as well. And that's the thing for me is, you know, I'm seeing a lot of the stuff that we did with particularly the heritage barley varieties that we've worked with, you know, old barley varieties that fell out of fashion in distillery use. And we've, you know, really been trying to champion them and bring them back. And seeing what they do is just, it's mind blowing to see, you know, at the end of the day, it's the same plant, but the flavor that you're getting out of just the fact that, you know, they're genetically different on the level is just mind blowing. And they bring a textural and flavor element that you just don't get in modern strains of barley. So that's the one I'm very excited about. Is rolling out some of those heritage bad boys and seeing what the world thinks.
I can say for us, just we're excited to see what you guys are doing in the future and how much you guys grow here in the States. Because I know that, I mean, we've said on multiple episodes at this point that people who like bourbon or love bourbon, some people are not aware of how much they love Scotch. And that when you have a distillery like you guys who are interested in innovating, who are interested in producing just incredible spirits as a whole, I think that once that just latches on and people figure it out and they understand, wow, look at all this that's available, I think that you guys are going to explode here, and I'm super excited to see that happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there anything else you guys want to mention? Anything you want to bring up or plug or anything?
We've got a release that I think is going to be coming out in July. So watch for that. Not sure how much we want to disclose on it right now, cool. But it's a really kind of interesting sort of set of whiskeys. I mean, the other thing, not whiskey related, and I want to be cautious about throwing this on your program, is we're doing some fundraising. We've got a crowd fund probably launching in June as well. So it's tough times in the industry right now. So we need to make sure we get a bit of money in the door.
Because I will say, if you have any of your listeners are thinking about making their way to Edinburgh, please come and see us, because we've got way more cool stuff in the distillery than we have anywhere else. So if you're kind of digging our vibe and want to check out any more, come and see us. As Rob says, we've got something like 8 different new makes on the shelf, 3 or 4 whiskeys sitting there, you name it. If you like our vibe, come and visit us, because it's going to be the best way to get our full experience.
On the way.
Tickets booked.
Nice, we'll see you there.
Well, you'd be very welcome to visit, and if you do and you want to do something on site, you just let us know, and we'll Callum's a sound engineer by background, so you might have to pull out some old skills.
I feel bad even saying that now. I've forgotten it. I couldn't get my headphones on before we started. That's how out the game I am now.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you guys again, and we hope to visit soon.
Yeah, for sure.
And thanks for having us on. It's been a lot of fun. You guys, put on a great show. So
yeah, I'll echo that. It's been class, gents. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely, our pleasure, for sure.
Kyle, what a great conversation.
Yeah, that was great. That was incredible.
It really, truly was a great conversation.
Yeah, I mean,
in our most recent.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Definitely our most
Definitely right there.
What I love about conversations like this, and especially a conversation with Callum and Rob, is that we learn about the people behind the product.
Yeah.
And for me, it adds that extra layer of love for the thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because we have this conversation. It's easy to go to a store, grab a bottle, and not care about all the passion that goes into that bottle.
Right.
But then you hear stories like this, and you hear from the people that are making this stuff, and it's just like, yeah, I love it that much more.
Yeah, it gives you it gives you context to the thing, and whenever you add context, it's going to change the way that you perceive said thing.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
to know these guys now, to have talked to these guys, to hear their enthusiasm and their passion behind what they're doing, their love of Edinburgh, their love of whiskey, it just adds so much more depth to it and makes the drink that much more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to circle back around. We had this conversation a little bit in the episode, but I want to talk about their beautiful whiskeys that they've sent us.
Lovely whiskeys.
Yeah, these whiskeys, again, were sent to us courtesy of ScotchDrinkersOnly.com. So go over there and find you a great bottle. There's not only can you find amazing whiskey from...
All right, whoa.
Yeah.
What is Scotch Drinkers Only?
ScotchDrinkersOnly.com is a whiskey shop where you can get great whiskeys like Holyrood Distillery, as well as a bunch of independent bottlers, and they're the only distributors here in the U.S.
So you can buy straight from them.
Absolutely.
No kidding.
Yeah, you can have it shipped right to your door.
Wow.
Yeah. You want to go to the door and see if we got anything?
Oh, have you ordered something?
Several things.
Then let's go check.
There's also whiskey right here from Holyrood.
Okay, we'll do this first.
Okay, let's do that first. Kyle, I just want to circle back around to the Embra and the Ambier. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
Plus, we have a little bit left in the bottles.
Yeah, that was a good call on your part.
Yeah. I want to drink some more whiskey.
I know where you're at. What I loved about both of these whiskeys is how they evolved over the dram.
Oh, yeah.
Like from beginning to end, they evolved. Both on the nose had a very prominent thing at the beginning that moved out of the way and allowed other things to come forward. So love that. Love that in general about, a mature whiskey anyway.
Yeah.
Love that it's not one note and loved experiencing that kind of evolution.
Yeah, and I love hearing Rob talk about the complexities within it, and it goes to show that like this is not something that was just haphazardly thrown together. This was something that like has been evolving, like you said, not just taste wise, but like we're evolving this new make, we're evolving this particular spirit until we feel like that's it. And even then, even when we feel like yes, we've got a great product, we're gonna tinker with it too.
Yeah,
because that's.
It's not precious.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
But we're willing to mold it into something better.
Especially the Embra here that we're sipping, unfortunately, the last little bit of our taster here, is that it is accessible for both people like ourselves who love peated whiskeys, but also I think that it will go over very well with someone who is brand new to peated whiskey as a whole.
Yeah, it was like hearing our ideas out loud of things that we've said 100%. So many times. Things that we always ask that, like, what would be a great introduction into smoky Scotch?
Yeah.
Like, what's that bottle? What is it? It's Embra.
Yep.
Like,
sure.
That's absolutely what it is.
Yeah.
Like, we've always kind of said that of, like, would this bottle be a good introduction? Because, like, you're not ready for Bizarrebecue.
Sure.
You're not ready for Octomore.
Right.
You're not there, but what would help you get there? Because once you're there, you can appreciate it.
Yeah.
What's that path that takes you there? This is it. This is so perfect. Like, when we first poured it, oh man, it was so smoky, and it was like, oh yeah, man, I get that. Y'all got a lot of smoke in this.
Yeah.
But then, like, just even after noticing it a few times, it's like, okay, but that actually gets out of the way, and now you're left with all this like lovely malt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And what I love and appreciate about it too, like we said, is that someone who is really into peat is going to find great things about this. Like, this isn't something that just kind of like, oh, it's cute, it's a peated whiskey. Sure. No, like, this is something that as a person who is a self-professed lover of peat at this point, like, I love this whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely delightful. Like, it's not, like, I think you said it. It's not watery in any way. It's viscous. It's got good body to it, but it's not overly so. It's not so clingy or claggy.
Claggy,
my new word.
That's good.
It's not to the to the point of like that you're left with this like kind of film or anything. Nice, clean, delightful.
Yeah, and then let's talk about the Ambier as well.
This one was the same way. What hit me first on this one was like caramel bomb. Callum had said malt bomb. And I definitely got there, but for me, it was caramel, it was honey sweetness, sweet.
Yeah.
But then that kind of subsided and got out of the way, and then all these like beautiful like raspberry, strawberry, just red berry notes.
Yeah.
That came through.
Dude, okay, for me, and like, yes, hearing him talk about it and going through it in the episode, but like, one of the things that I loved about visiting Scotland is the accessibility of local bakeries. And so like you go everywhere, and like every little town has a local bakery, and like baked goods, and I don't know if it's just a Eurocentric thing in general, but baked goods are like a thing.
Oh yeah.
Like, obviously we like, baked goods here in the US, but like, it's different.
But we don't take it to an art.
No, it's like, it's like a grocery, at least in the majority of the US. You got your big cities that, yes, we'll do that for sure.
Yeah.
But like everything outside of cities, like, you got your grocery store baked goods.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. They're not crafted. But this reminds me of like just going to a small little bakery in Scotland, and like you walk into a bakery and it's like, oh, y'all using sugar, huh? Okay. Exactly. And like just the nose is like, that's exactly what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
And you said caramel. I'm getting like caramelized peach, like a caramel peach crumble.
Yeah.
It's just it's tablet sweet.
Yeah, the fact that he said that was like, oh man, you are spot on with it.
Spot on.
It's Pop-Tart right out of the oven.
It's a Pop-Tart. Yeah.
Right out of the toaster, man.
And then on the palate, it's accentuated even further. Like
Yeah.
I think the actual like the bitter is what comes through to me. Like the sweet is on the nose, and the sweet's there on the palate. I'm not saying it's not, but like it's that bitter
You're left
that-
with it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the bitter that kind of like that's the pronounced nature. So you get this really nice balance between bitter and sweet, and that man, it's that balance that's my happy place.
Yeah. That's where I want my dram to be
Exactly.
for sure. Neither one of these were like huge curveballs from nose to palate.
Right.
But I think it is like it's in the aftertaste. It's in the end of the palate where you are kind of perhaps maybe it was a slider. It just kind of fell off everything.
Little knuckle.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
this one specifically, the Ambier.
Yep.
Where it's so sweet on the nose, so sweet on the front of the palate, but surprisingly on that back end palate,
Yeah.
you're just left with this really pretty bitter.
Yeah.
That's like, oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that for me. I really appreciate that.
Exactly. Man, so I just want to say again, thanks to Rob and Callum for meeting with us and taking time out of their day to talk to us and to allow us to share this with all of you guys.
Yeah, such a cool experience.
Yeah, and one more time, thanks again to Scotch Drinkers Only for providing us with these samples. That way we can have some beautiful drams to try.
Indeed. Thank you all around.
Kyle, you got anything else?
No, I think that'll probably do it.
Yeah.
Sadly.
I was gonna say, unfortunately, we don't have any more whiskey, and we already logged off the call with Rob and Callum.
I mean, it's okay. We got to pull up plane tickets anyway.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like we've got a meeting with them in Edinburgh like next week.
Next week, you mean tomorrow?
So we better go.
Yeah, we better go right now. Well, on that note, we'd love to hear if you've been to the Holyrood Distillery there in Edinburgh.
Yeah, how lucky are you? Let us know.
I'm very lucky.
Tell me about your experience.
Right now, I already
No, I
did.
mean, we already heard you.
Oh, okay.
But I'm saying the other people.
Oh, the
that were-
people. Yeah, makes sense. We'd also love to know if you've had a chance here in the States to try some of the Ambier or Embra or any other Holyrood Distillery product.
Yeah.
You can get in touch with us through email. That's drepandstone@gmail.com. You can also get in touch with us through social media.
It's always Drep and Stone. DREP and Stone.
Is it one word?
It's one big word,
Oh, okay.
but all mashed
Smooshed.
together
It's
because
smooshed.
of website stuff.
Yeah. Some people would say smushed. I say smooshed.
Yeah. Some people would say claggy. Yeah. It's all claggy together.
Clagging together, yeah.
Yeah.
That might be my new favorite
Yeah,
word.
just like sticks together.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's claggy.
For sure. Well, on that note, you know everything to do. Go support Drep and
Yeah.
Stone. Tell people.
Like a thing, thumbs up a thing.
Yeah.
Woo, heart a thing.
Heart a thing.
Comment on a thing.
Share something.
Yeah.
Go to Patreon. Support everything.
all good.
You know the stuff.
Happy things.
All around. Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
May your glass overflow.
And your ass never show. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.